All right.
Hi, nice to see you.
Hello. You
It's been a
too.
while.
It really has. Okay, so where are you at right now?
I am in
Uh,
Tokyo, Japan, and
okay.
it's the morning here and it is evening for you.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, I'm
Okay.
tired and you're tired in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah, but here we are. I love it. Okay, so just spoiler alert, what we're going to be heading
Okay.
into is um, emotional intelligence. And the reason why I specifically brought Connor on here is because he is a man on my team. And when I say team, that's just my friend group. That thrives with emotional intelligence. And honestly, I hear a lot of women out there saying men are just dumb, boys are just dumb.
Mm,
And I go, but I have men on my team that aren't. They have emotional intelligence. That doesn't mean you guys are perfect, but
mm.
clearly you are someone who thrives in this area.
Almost perfect. Just kidding.
Right? Yeah.
Sacrilegious.
Like humbly. Yeah, but
Blasphemous, you know.
so when I say that, like that just a whole bunch of women just think men are just dumb, boys are just dumb. Like, what's your take
Yeah.
on that?
I think they have a point, right? I think that, I think stereotypes are there for a little bit of a reason because there is truth to a lot of things that are just things that we experience or see,
Hmm.
right? But I do think that they have a point. I think a lot of guys, whether it's because of how they're raised, whether it's their genetics, whether it's the culture they're from, I think there's a whole bunch of like lying factors, underlying factors of why men, for the most part, are kind of um, not as a whole so emotionally intelligent as compared to their female counterparts, I think. Like that's really how I feel. And of
Hmm.
course, it's not all men, right?
Hmm.
But it sure does seem to be a big majority of men in the media, in a lot of different places. And I think in the media, we can get into it a little bit later, but I think even in the media, like there's this whole advocation right now for like men need to show their feelings and men need to be better listeners and men need to do this and that. Um, which I agree with, right? I mean, there's
Hmm.
parts that I don't agree with so much, right? Because we can get into it all, but I just think that yeah, there's so many factors that play into this whole thing, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. Like, the hometown I grew up in, I definitely knew some men that had emotional intelligence, but compared to my hometown, compared to where I live now,
Mm,
really different. I
yeah.
learned a lot, just how to, I guess, I learned more about emotional intelligence because of men. They were teaching me how to help, like helping me with my feelings and how to communicate. And I'm like, this is foreign. I didn't get a lot of that in my hometown, to be honest, from men. You know what
Mm,
I mean? It's out
mm.
there. But I just think there's a lot of truth. And it's like, okay, where are you at? And also, what were you taught? And, a lot of the argument I've heard too is, well, boys are just wired differently, men are just wired differently. While there is biological truth to the difference between a man and a woman, emotional intelligence is learned behavior.
Mm, mm, mm.
Some people are just born with, certain traits of just knowing what to say and what not to say in a sense. But ultimately, like, how are your parents? Were they teaching you what's good language, what's bad language, what to
Oh yeah,
filter?
from the get-go, right? Like
Yeah.
you come out of the womb, right?
Yeah.
So especially when when you're raised in some sort of like religious family, I think even more then,
Hmm.
from the time that you're born, you're just like kind of drilled with well, biblical truth. You're drilled with just morals, to be honest. You're drilled with a good base. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that everybody that is a man that is raised in church in general is like, oh, they're emotionally intelligent. But
Yeah.
on average, you go to church and there are men at church that have been going since the time that they were young. I feel like you can find more men that were raised in morals that have a little bit more emotional intelligence than those say that aren't. And I'm from your hometown as well, right? If we're
Hmm.
talking about that same hometown, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I get what you mean. I'm not, I was a transplant there in high school, of course,
Hmm.
but I remember just having the same feelings of, whoa, this is a totally different culture
Hmm.
from the really kind of staunch conservative culture that I had come from in Nevada. And I came to kind of like anything goes hippy dippy liberal like Oregon, right?
Yeah.
And I was so blown away by like how um of course it's more open, right? You can talk about like anything you want to in Oregon, I felt like, but like there's this kind of underlying dark side of it all where I feel like it was kind of there was a lot of immaturity, if that makes sense, because there's
Yeah.
not a lot of people in that town raised on sort of, I'm not going to say like the majority, right? But there was like quite a few people that aren't raised in sort of Christian values, or they might say that they're Christian, right? But they kind of don't know what that means, right?
They weren't maybe like necessarily held accountable to the Christian
Yeah,
standard.
exactly. From their
Yeah.
parents, from their home bringing. And it all starts in the home, to be honest, I think, you
Yeah.
know.
And also, there is a dark side to that. Like, my dad was abusive. I had to learn at a young age emotional intelligence to keep myself safe. Like, oh, read a room. Is that man safe? Is his body language safe?
Yep.
As
Yep.
4 years old, I was processing that and, like, oh, I know what unsafe body language looks like, or angry, and like not stepping over those lines, right? So I learned it in a lot, my upbringing out of abuse, but then obviously I got healthy examples from my mother, as especially he left, you know? And so, yeah, I think there are some churches that do a good job teaching emotional intelligence. Jesus had emotional intelligence. He
Oh,
wasn't just
100%.
being a jerk to everyone on the streets, like, follow me or
Yeah.
you're dumb. Like, that wasn't it. He spoke truth, but he wasn't shoving it down people's throat. Also, have you experienced, so there's all these denominations out there. Have you experienced just where you grew up in your denomination, do you
Mhm.
think emotional intelligence was taught more?
I think emotional intelligence taught more. I think a little bit more, to be honest.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Church Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? And people like to give that the nickname Mormons because we believe in the Bible and in the Book of Mormon, right? And I think growing up, I think in our church, it's a little bit different than other Christianity because we, for a lot of reasons, right? But I think one thing that relates to kind of this emotional intelligence is we aren't taught in church to brag on other religions. We're not taught in church to um, say bad things about other Christians. We're taught to come together as Christians. We're taught to, even though every denomination has different opinions about things or
Hmm.
different um, stances on the gospel, right? We're not taught to focus on the differences so much as we're taught from an early age, right? Just
Hmm.
like, yeah, there's different denominations, there's different people in the world, and we all got to get along. That's what Jesus did. That's what he preached, is we got to all come together as one body of Christ. And that's how it's going to be in the end, right? And
Yes.
so I just think that, yeah, for how do I say this? It might give it away a little bit, but like growing up in Seaside a little bit, when I moved there in the middle of high school, was very interesting to me about the religions that kind of predominantly how do I say, took over the town.
Hmm.
Like there was only a couple, right? And it was just very interesting to be LDS in that school because there were a couple of people every now and then that would just come up to me out of nowhere and kind of just say their thoughts about you Mormons, you aren't Christian, you stupid Mormons. Like we're the ones that are more Christian. We da 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 this and that, and they'll just bring things up, and I'll just listen to them. But I remember a couple of them, they had like youth groups every week, right? I don't know what you call it in like your like denomination, or I think every
Yeah.
Christian nation has a different like word for like the youth group that they meet every week. But there was this one church in town, and I remember that a couple of them came up to me in high school and said, yeah, we watched this thing about Mormons and how Mormons are bad and how you're just not Christian and how all these things. And um, it was just really weird to me because I don't go to youth group to go and rag on other religions or to learn bad things about other religions or anything
Yeah.
like. But I feel like a lot of Christian denominations, this might sound a little harsh, they're so worried about keeping members and like getting money. Um, how do I put this? That they kind of scare people instead of using biblical truth to like bring people in. They scare people a little bit in order to control their numbers, to control the people coming to church, to make sure that nobody leaves and keeps coming and pays their tithing, to be
Mm.
honest. that's kind of how I've felt a lot of times. When it comes to a lot of different Christian denominations that'll just come up and give me their 2 cents about how I'm not Christian, right?
Wow.
Like, well, how
Yeah.
Christian is that, you know? Um,
Yeah, let's pause on that. Like, let's
yeah,
just do the basic Google search
yeah,
of what is a Christian. Anyone, man, woman, or child who trusts in Jesus Christ as his or her Savior and Lord and who strives to follow him in every area of life.
yep,
So, that being said, yeah, you're
mm,
Christian. You're a
yep.
follower of Christ.
Thank you.
And yeah, and it's like, but
Uh,
you go to the Mormon
you go to
church.
the
It's like,
Mormon church. I'm like, yeah, but you go to the Baptist one,
yeah,
and you know,
yeah, yeah. I'm non-denominational. And it's like
yeah,
exactly what you said. It's like I love that like your church just honed in on we're all gonna meet one day anyways. From
mm,
and the way I view it, the way I've explained it is we're all playing baseball, but we all have different coaches. We're
I
all in the
really.
same game though.
What do you say? I use it sometimes. We different convictions. What do you say?
I mean probably just to each their own convictions.
Each their own convictions. I really like that. And I use that sometimes now because it's just a short, simple way to say, hey, look, like we all believe in what we believe. And if it's helping us get closer to Christ, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the most important thing. You know, I do think we should always continue learning and should always continue striving to understand more about Him and about God.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do think that as long as we're striving, we're going to be okay, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the scriptures it says strive to be this, strive to be that, you know. Of course there's certain black and white things, but for the
Yeah.
most part, as long as you're trying, that's really what God wants, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if we're getting into the Bible too, it's like there's some absolutes, but there's also a lot of creative freedom. And it's like
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
creative freedom, are you still honoring the absolute truths?
yeah,
And so,
exactly.
yeah, I've been born and raised a Christian my whole entire life, and I have seen some Christians who are really good with emotional intelligence, but then I see
Mm,
some Christians that you don't look like me, so you're wrong. That's
yeah.
not Jesus, and that's also not emotional intelligence. Why would anyone want to join your team when you're coming at them like that?
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of people, no matter if they're religious or not, people
Hmm.
just like we're all dealing with kind of we're in a fallen world, right? So we're all
Yeah.
dealing with things in our personality that might not be perfect or things within our, how do I say this? Um, I guess I'm just trying to say that we have to be patient with everybody. And I feel like I've
Hmm.
had a lot of times in my life where um, a lot of people will come up to me, whether they're some sort of denomination. I mean, the recent one was a Baptist lady coming up to me telling me, "You're not Christian." Da, 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 da. Um,
Which isn't
but
Christian, just
which
for
isn't
reference.
Christian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of time it kind of just goes back to they don't want to know anything outside of their sphere of knowledge. Like from the
Mm-hmm.
time I was little, like we're taught search for knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pray to God. Pray to God directly to know if it's true or not. Like pray
Mm-hmm.
to God about anything, you know, and the Holy Spirit will testify to your heart if that is true or not, or if there is
Mm-hmm.
truth there. It's all about practicing discernment, right? And this will
Mm-hmm.
kind of tie into emotional intelligence, is that I really think that God wants us to have discernment, right?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
wants us to discern what's good, what's bad, but a lot of people just want to be sheep in a bad way, right? There's a biblical, like, being a sheep and following the shepherd, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what God wants. But I think within that sphere, it's like, becoming a leader and, blah, blah, blah. Following the shepherd doesn't mean staying a sheep, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that God understands that a lot of his children on this earth are kind of sheeple.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's great that they're in a denomination. That's great that they have their convictions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they don't really want to think outside of the box because people get comfortable, I think. And
Mm.
so if somebody, for example, this recent Baptist lady came up to me, is like, I was like, I don't know you. Who are you? You know?
Yeah.
But she just probably is one of those people that like want to, be a good Christian in her definition of what that like word is and what that means. But is that the biblical definition? Is that the right definition that like Christ made? Not
Yeah.
really. But I think there's a lot of people that aren't open to knowing more, being corrected. You have to be a little bit humble for that. And I think even in a
Yeah.
church sphere, it's hard to be humble. you know?
Yeah. And I don't want to just talk poorly about my hometown. I just do want
No,
to make
no,
some
no.
observations.
I will, but you don't have to.
Um, so on that though, I personally feel like it was really cliquey.
Clicky.
I grew up in, I would say, cliques, and I'll be the first to say I partook in some of this cliquey behavior and
Mhm.
stuff.
Everyone does
Um,
in high school.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And I just think there was a lot. I just had an attitude of like, my opinion's right, and if you don't agree with it, you're wrong. And
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah.
And, as I grew up and like literally like moving away from that town too did help me see other perspectives. It's like, oh,
100%.
there's so much more than just two clicks in life,
Yeah.
and there's obviously me and you, we had our own special flavor amongst the clicks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all that
We
just,
weren't even a clique. We were just kind
yeah,
of there.
yeah, right? And so all that to say, it was just like kind of moving away and stuff. And it's like I get to see the difference. I remember one time specifically, he's one of my best friends here. We were disagreeing over something. It's
Mm-hmm.
simple, just simple. And then he was like, oh, okay. And then I literally, this was like a little bit after I moved away from Oregon, okay? Just so like I was like
Mm-hmm.
23 at the time. And I just said, okay, so who wins? And he's like, nobody wins. I just wanted to see where you were at. That threw me off. I'm like, what do you mean? One of us at the end of this disagreement, one of us had to win. And he was like, no, I just wanted to see your heart on it. That was wild to me back then. Now I'm like, oh, I love that. Tell me your
Mm-hmm.
difference. Like,
Yeah.
I don't read the Book of Mormon, but you're allowed to talk to me about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And it's beautiful to see the differences.
Oh,
Jesus didn't say thou shalt follow cliques. Jesus said, follow these rules.
yeah.
Like, and I just love that. But yeah, so obviously you didn't grow up in my hometown, but you came to it and you experienced it. Then you
Yeah.
went
Transplant
abroad.
abroad. Yeah.
You really did. So it's like based on your experience, so your first, it was Russia, right?
Russia. Yep. So I went on my 2-year mission for my church to Siberia, Russia. Really
Mm-hmm.
cold. Hell could freeze over.
Yeah, I can't fathom that. I'm crying in 50 degrees, but like wild. So in that, did you see, what did emotional intelligence look like over there? Different culture, different people.
Different culture, different people. Okay, we're gonna get into a lot of deep stuff today, but I really that was my first kind of experience. Of course, I had gone on vacation. Well, it wasn't a
Hmm.
vacation so much, but I had been to Japan before, right? And
Hmm.
that was the only time I had been outside of America, right? Was when I was in Japan, and it was just like fun and all these things and wow, modern, but I didn't really get to know the culture, right?
Hmm.
Then I go on my mission when I'm 18 to Siberia, Russia, right? And it was total culture shock. It was like
Hmm.
if you ever played my dad used to play this video game called Fallout 3 when I was growing up, and it was like kind of like this post-apocalyptic world where like you're in a bunker and then you finally are able to escape the bunker because I don't know. And then there's like people that are like missing limbs and arms and teeth. Anyway, that was the first city I was in Russia. I was like, "Oh my
Wow.
God." Like this is totally different. Nobody in America really can understand what Russia is like until you actually go there yourself.
Wow.
Um, we just have such a different conception of what it means in America. What was I saying?
Just the culture shock and just what
Culture
it,
shock and the people having emotional intelligence. I love Russians to death now, right? But the
hmm
ones that I love are emotionally intelligent and far and few in between.
mm,
And I really do think that we don't have to get so much into politics, but
yeah.
communism, if you aren't allowed to practice any religion except worshiping your state government for almost a century, it really
Wow.
does take a lot of those morals that you learn through religious like service through religion in general, right? It takes it out of the culture a bit. And the amount of people that I had met that were over the age of 60, 70, that just kind of lived through this whole revolution of no religion, no morals. Of course, there's morals, but skewed, in my
Hmm.
opinion, right? No biblical kind of base for any of these things, right?
Hmm.
Um, it stunts your growth. And
Mm.
the amount of people that I met over the age of 60 that just acted kind of teenage like because all of their choices had been chosen for them their whole life. They were
Wow.
never really allowed to grow emotionally because if you thought outside of the box, if you tried to think a little bit differently or question anything, you could be sent to the gulags, you could be
Wow.
killed, you could have your neighbors tattle on you, tell on you, and then be killed or sent to a gulag or imprisoned or so many things, so many consequences for just simple things that we take for granted in America.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was just so surprising to me how instead of thinking, here's vodka. In Russia, a bottle of vodka that's the same like size of a water bottle, same price. I mean, sorry,
Oh.
cheaper, cheaper. Vodka is cheaper than
Oh.
water.
Wow.
And so it was just a very interesting culture shock for me in so many ways, but in this way, people just, in my opinion, in my kind of religious American background opinion, um, they just didn't have the chance to grow because their parents didn't teach them that, and their parents didn't teach them that because they were too scared that they were going to get killed.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's just generations of people that kind of unlearned God almost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
their
mean,
body anyway, their spirit
yeah.
not so much. They feel it, they just don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, we can even see examples of that in the Old Testament. Like
yeah,
there was what, like 400 years without God, the Israelites, or it slowly, God did not become a practice.
yep,
And it was like, then these people, it's just wild behavior, right?
yep, yep,
Not to say everyone that doesn't believe in God is wild, but it's like
exactly.
you see a pattern of godly, righteous morals,
Mm,
success in the land.
yep,
They're not doing that, droughts in the land. And it's like we can still see that in today, you know? But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So definitely more cold cultured over there. But
yep.
yeah, and naturally developmental regression if you're not taught how to go past teenage years.
With spirituality, I really feel that like you're either progressing or you're regressing. I don't think
Hmm.
there's really a middle ground when it comes to it. And I think it's a constant daily battle almost of am I progressing today in this or regressing? And I think, it's kind of a mixture of both in everybody's lives every day, right?
Yeah.
But if you are not allowed to practice, if it's illegal and there's life on the line, the majority of the people are just going to go, don't kill me. Give me more vodka,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's just how they learn to cope. And, you can cope with that, or you can cope with God and, you know, learn to deal with your human self. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's like, are we just being stagnant or are we moving forward?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is a daily thing. And, I would say emotional intelligence, this is one of my favorite topics and all that, but it's still a daily choice to be
It's a daily
intelligent.
choice.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, sorry.
No, just like in that, like someone's being a jerk, be like, okay, do you sit them the heck on down or do you just recognize where that emotionally and I
Comes
can't
from.
change them
Yeah.
and I just choose to move forward instead?
Yeah.
Some days are easier than others and it's
Yeah.
a constant choice to make healthy decisions?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
And
now you finish.
no, 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 no. I was
Oh,
just gonna say,
okay.
yeah, like no, I think it's great. What did you say? You just said yeah, like there's a lot of people in the world are taught like if somebody's like coming at you, like, you gotta fight back, you gotta win, you gotta
Hmm.
have the last word. But Jesus taught us to turn the other cheek, right? And so
Yeah.
I just think that yeah, what you said is true. Every once in a while you have to put somebody in their place.
Oh,
But,
we can do that
but
respectfully.
yeah, respectfully.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, 100%. Sorry, I was just going off of what you were saying. So
Yeah, no. Yeah, there is a respectful sit down. I also teach those. I love it. But
one more
okay.
thing. Sorry, it just reminded me. So I had a pop up in my brain. But it just reminds me of something that I was reading about the other day, actually, how it kind of goes into discernment and
Hmm.
to have emotional intelligence, right? And if those people come into your life, you have to learn. A lot of people in Christendom in general, I feel like, are too scared to come across as judgmental
Hmm.
unless that person is of another denomination or faith of Christianity. Just kidding.
Wow.
But like
Well, some
I
people.
honestly though, right, that does exist. But I really do think that God calls us to judge because in a part of discernment is judging. We have to
Righteous judgment.
righteous judgment. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
final judgment of like, ew, this person. It's not like a final, this is the end all. They can't change. I don't have any hope for this person. This is how they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of people get judgmentalness, which is that confused with just judging things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using righteous judgment, and they kind of skew it together.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of people in Christianity are too scared to be looked at as judgmental or anything. So I feel like I've seen so many
Yeah.
instances where that kind of stunts their emotional intelligence in men and women, right? Because they don't want to judge because Jesus says don't judge, and I don't want to be, but then I kind of question that person's heart sometimes because if they put judgmentalness and judging together, maybe that's their struggle in life is that they
Mm-hmm.
are judgmental and they really don't like people. That's
Mm-hmm.
my always my thought that comes to my head is maybe this is good for them not to, you know, say something about a person because they really might believe it. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I have said something saying, I don't know, for example, I'll 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 bring up some friend in the friend group that's struggling with something and I'm like they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be like that's kind of like what should we do? But then maybe one of the other friends in the friend group doesn't differentiate between judgmentalness and righteous judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so they latch on to that and they take that thing as like a negative thing about that person and go, oh my gosh, yeah, I don't like that person because of that. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like there's a lot of people that haven't really learned differentiation in life, right? They don't know how to
Yeah.
pull the
Yeah.
part,
I
you
can
know?
see that. Yeah, I come from a pretty straightforward family. I
Mm.
wasn't that girl that was like partying and I didn't get super wild in high school, but I had an attitude, right?
But it was nice. It was a breath of fresh air sometimes.
You're not the only one who's told me that. Like, okay, it's a breath of fresh air, if you will, mother. Um, but all that to say, it's just like there is righteous judgment.
Mm,
There is like, hey, I love you, and I know you're called higher than this, and it's really hurting me to see you kind of right here. I had one of those talks with a friend. They
mm,
they took it in, but they weren't ready to adjust. And I was
mm,
like, I love you. I just don't love what you're doing right now. Guess what? We were still friends. Guess what? I'm still walking with them. I'm not participating in all their behaviors, but
yeah.
they came around and they ended up saying, hey, you were right. Thanks for having my back and still loving me. And it was like, heck yeah, you know? But then in that, I wasn't going, ah, this person, they're doing this. They're
I can't
such full of
believe
crap. They're,
them.
yeah, I'm like,
Awful people.
that's not righteous judgment and I'm going to the source. But then so there's that. This person took it well, right? But then we have other people like, "Hey, I love you. Like Bible says we're not supposed to do this. I know you love God. Like how can I help you?" And like they judged me. They told me I wasn't perfect and they judged me and it's like there's
Mhm,
righteous judgment. We're supposed to iron sharpens iron, right?
mhm,
But it's you have to have the healthy balance. Not to say I've always done it the best, but it's like we do have those really judgmental Christians, the self-righteous, if you will. But then we do have the people trying to love, and it's like some people just don't know how to take it. Some people also don't know how to hold themselves accountable and don't want to
mhm,
hear that they're wrong, you know?
mhm,
So, oh, they're just judgmental Christians. I want nothing to do with it. And it's like, that's why it's good for us to have discernment on
mhm.
like, is there any truth to what this person is saying? Because if there's not, I had one person told me God told them to talk to me, which I'm going to listen if God's highlighting something, right? You know what's coming. And they basically said, I love you, but I'm going to call you out when you're being a bad puppy. I
Like who
really
gave
don't
them that authority?
I don't think the Lord calls me a bad puppy.
Yeah,
And
no.
also I wasn't in a season of like the way they were talking about me and God says change. I'm like, God, you know that. I don't think they're talking about the same person because you know where
Mm,
I'm at, you know? And it was just like things like that. So I had to use my discernment on that of like, is God going to downplay you and call you a bad puppy?
yeah, no.
No. That's a red flag right there.
Excuse me, who are you? Where did you get your authority from to just come up to me and get revelation to God for me? Like, who are you? Like, yeah, are
Yeah.
you?
And it's in those moments we're taught to flush it. If
Yep.
you somebody gives a word and they're like, "Hey, this is what I feel God's highlighting." I've had, "Oh my gosh, I'm totally going through that." Like I totally feel seen, like God just revealed that. I love that.
Yep.
There's been other moments of like there was some truth to that, but I'm flushing 99% of what you
Yep.
just
Yep.
said.
Yep. And you got
Like,
to do that sometimes.
yeah. And instead of like, "Oh, Christians suck." It's like, "No, but some lack emotional intelligence."
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yep.
move
Yep.
along. you
Yes.
know?
Mm,
But I went to Bible school over here. That's what originally brought me to NorCal. And I
mm,
was really like impressed. Not every church does this. Not every
mm,
church that I've been to does this. But they just said, all right, guys, we are students here. We are here to represent God well. I want
mm,
you tipping when you go out. I want you being a good community member when you
mm,
go out. You
mm,
represent this school, and this school represents God.
mm.
Like and that right there, I'm like, oh, that's emotional
Yep.
intelligence. Carry
Mm,
yourself well, you
mm.
know? And it's emotional intelligence is such a huge category. We can dive in all these areas, but it's just like, yeah, just honing in on like Christianity and stuff. It's like, why would anybody want to join Baptists if that was your experience? And now I know some
Yeah,
lovely
yeah.
Baptists,
Me
right?
too.
So, exactly. So it's just things like that that like, let's watch ourselves. Let's
Yeah,
watch our tone. Know your space and know your place, you
yeah.
know? If you were in receive mode of like, oh yeah, I'll hear your Baptist perspective. Like, yeah,
I love
let's
it.
talk.
I
And
am so open to that crap, you know?
yeah, yeah, right. And it's just in that, it's honing in on the truth. Me and you are not arguing over, I don't read the Book of Mormon. We're going
But
like,
yeah.
yeah, we're not doing
Yeah.
that. We're like, hey, what's God
No,
highlighting to you? Or like, hey,
exactly.
like, I feel like I get life after our conversations. I was just like, man, that guy loves God. Man,
Mm.
I feel like I'm growing just having conversations. And it's like, but he's
Likewise.
Mormon. And it's like, and like,
You
he
can't
goes,
listen to him. He's
like,
the devil. He shaves his horn every morning.
and it's wild. And I've been friends with people of all over like religions. I've been friends with atheists. I've had close Jehovah Witness friends. And it's just like we hone in. Yes, we've had conversations of disagreements of like, yeah, I'm not on that one. But then it's like, oh no, but hey, yeah, I love Jehovah too.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. That's just
it,
another name, we can say that name, we can
yeah.
relate, you know?
Right? And yeah, it's just it's so good. And it's just yeah, it's refreshing to be around other people that can do that. I
100%.
heard I had a friend recently tell me that so she's like looking for new friends or more friends, I should say, and she's meeting new people. And one person she just heard make a comment, be like, "Oh, I don't know if I can be friends with that person. They made this comment." Now, I don't know what the comment was, and there's certain boundaries being crossed. Like, if it's crossing a boundary, then that's one thing to assess. But it's like, was this person lovely in every area, but they just said one sentence that you didn't agree with? That's not a reason to write somebody off.
This kind of
Like,
goes to American culture problems nowadays, yeah.
yeah,
People,
and
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. And it's just like the reason I have so many friends, I believe, is because of the openness of like, okay, like, oh, you're atheist? I have a friend that does new age stuff that Bible says is witchcraft. Now, I don't participate in that. I don't agree with that. But hey, I love you. You're allowed to go do that by
Exactly.
yourself.
Exactly. You're allowed to do it. We have free agency in this world, and God gave us that. So I
Yeah.
really think that, how do I say this? Well, from like childhood, we were always taught in church, especially, have holy envy almost for every religion, every denomination, because everybody does something really good. Everyone does something even a little bit better sometimes than the way that we do it.
Yeah. And take it on if they
And you
do it
take
better
it
than you.
on. Exactly. You learn from them because, especially if they're following Christ, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing something a little bit better than I will always say, my conviction is not, in the Jehovah Witness religion at all.
Hmm.
However, they know their scriptures. They
Hmm.
are so good at knowing their Bible. They can quote it verbatim. It's almost like talking to a Muslim sometimes, like, and how they can kind of recite the Quran. I really admire people that are in the Jehovah Witness religion that
Hmm.
just able to recite things. They're able to remember things very well. And I think that is such a good godly trait, especially if you're doing it to improve your spiritual connection with God?
Yeah. And I'll also highlight some Jehovah Witness traits and stuff, if you will. I talked to some of them because they had I've met a lot with emotional intelligence. I'm like, this is beautiful.
Hmm.
Tell me how you learned. And one person just told me we're taught to like we're taught this because we're witnessing, but we don't want to witness to people who don't want it. We want to
Yeah.
be able to read their body language and go, hey, like if you're not at a place, like that's okay. You can tell us no. Now, I'm not saying every Jehovah Witness does that, but like this group was taught that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I respect that, you know? And like you said, it's like not honing in on the differences, but oh, you do that better than us. Can I do that? Yeah,
Can
I
I do that a
can.
little bit better? Yeah. In
Yeah.
my own sphere? Of course I can. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, no, I love that. I think that's so great. So on this,
Uh-huh.
you're obviously a man that thrives in this area. You obviously are around a lot of other men. Have you obviously like in my position as a coach, I'm teaching like men and women emotional intelligence, right?
Right.
Um, but what's your experience? Like, have you just naturally in your sphere of influence just been able to teach others? Just, taking on emotional intelligence, like when you were in Russia, when you were doing your missions and stuff, it's like, did you have opportunities to kind of spread your emotional intelligence awareness?
I don't know if I ever like phrased it as like emotional intelligence back then, right? Or
Hmm.
even now, I don't think I really um let me so how do I put this? So I don't know if I ever really like say to people when they say, because I get a lot in my life, like you're just so different. Like you're just like you're so your energy is different. You're so light. Like I don't know what it means. Like when I look in your eyes, there's like something there, but you're just different, Connor. Like what is it, right? And a part of it is emotional intelligence, right? I
Hmm.
that. A part of it I think is that like kind of light of Christ that we're all born with. Like, and I think if you strive to do your best to be the best Christian that you can, to like, do what Christ would have you do, the more Christ-like attributes you try and strive to have, I feel like the more light that you let into your life, right? And so
Hmm.
that's what people notice. So I don't think I ever really like right off the bat when I talk to people go, oh yeah, that's just that's everything you see from me is from God, like this
Hmm.
wasn't my personality like what when I was 14, 13, like I was the shy little quiet boy.
Hmm.
um but like everything that you like about me, this is all like gifts that are given to me through God that I've either strived for or found that I had and I didn't know I had before, right?
Yeah.
God. And so I don't know if I ever phrase it as emotional intelligence, but I phrase it like that. I always put
Hmm.
the blame, not the blame, but like I give it to God,
The
basically.
credit. Yeah.
The credit. Yeah, that's yeah, exactly. Thank you. But yeah, in Russia, here's the thing, even when outside of my mission, I've always felt it my responsibility to be a missionary, like every member a missionary kind of thing. So
Hmm.
I'm very open about my religion. And even when I was on my mission when I was 18 to 20, right? I'm 30 now. I just have never been the type of person to go up to somebody and been like, "Did you know God? Do you want to know more about God?" Like that's weird. Like nobody wants that. That's not emotionally intelligent at all, right? And like I do think God gave each of us a personality and like
Hmm.
our own hobbies and likes to use those things to help people where they're at, right? And it's never been in my whole life, my life's goal to just go out and baptize people and like help them come to Christ and all those things. Like for me, it's like people are gonna choose that themselves. It's
Yeah.
not my it's my duty to be a good example of Christ and how I am striving to be Christ-like in my daily actions, right? But it's not my like, yes, I need to go baptize. I need to um I feel like I've had a lot of people from other denominations come up to me and they want to proselyte to me, right? And they want to say, hey, like when we talk to God and I'm like, yeah, about God to you. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, can we pray for you? Sure, grab my hands, whatever you want to do. And yeah, let's do it. And they're so open. They're like, oh my gosh, we can teach this person, right?
Hmm.
And then as soon as I say, oh yeah, I'm LDS, it's the automatic, you're going to hell, you're going to this, you're awful. Like, how could you? Like, you need to repent, you need to do all these things. And I'm just looking at them and I just kind of giggle because I'm like, oh goodness, are you doing missionary work because you really want to help people, or is it about your own ego and how you feel about with
Mm.
you and God? Sometimes I feel like it's like kind of like this narcissistic almost intentions that some Christians seem to have in, oh my gosh, I need points with God. I need heavenly points, so I need to go out and preach instead of
Hmm.
actually just loving people where they're at and
Hmm.
your own actions and your own non-judgmental actions like being as Christ-like as you can be. right? Going up to people and talking to them and just being their friend. That's what people want.
Yes.
People want friendship.
Yes.
People want to be seen. People want to be seen deeply. I really love, we have this lady in our church, and she gave a talk a couple of years back, and it was about Christ and how Christ saw others deeply, right?
Hmm.
That's kind of been my motto. Like before I even heard that, I've it resonated so deeply with me when I heard it, but it's because that's how I've always felt. See other people deeply, see others the way that God wants you to see them. See
Hmm.
them dressed in white. See them at a baptism, see them the way that God sees it, because we're all children of God, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think because of my personality, I guess, or because of that emotional intelligence or of who I am, I've just always tried to see people deeply because I want to be seen deeply. And when
Yeah.
I, in my teenage years, was struggling a lot, and I came to understand, oh, God sees me deeply. God knows who I am individually. He knows me better than I even know myself.
Hmm.
Um, I was able to open up that door for other people after then, if that
Wow.
makes. Yeah.
I love that. And just to be able to see people deeply, like, and it's as they are,
Mm,
and in that we can see the potential of people to be like, oh, I see they could actually be really good at this, but
yeah,
I'm just gonna love them where they're at. Um,
exactly.
I don't want to say this to puff myself up, but I want to
Well
just use
said.
it as an
No,
example.
you're allowed. You're Kayla. I'm sorry.
So
We don't go by
you
Kayla.
know me by
I
Kayla,
know
but
you by
like
Kayla,
you're
but like
allowed to,
for everybody
okay?
else, yeah,
Like
okay. I'm
you're
sorry.
good. You're good. You know he's an OG if he calls me
Yeah,
Kayla.
yeah.
Um, but all that to say, I just had somebody that they didn't believe in God. They believed something was out there, but they didn't believe in God. And they had like a Satan on their water bottle sticker, and it was just like that's where
You're
they're
like,
at,
all
like
right.
you know. And
Yeah,
they knew I was Christian, and you know what? We came to be such good friends.
yeah.
And in that, I just had moments, just like praying for this person. Like, I would really love for them to know the love of God like I do, not just be a Christian because it's a title, but I want them to know you, God. And I just felt like in that, God was just saying, just love them, just love
Mhm.
them.
Yep.
And then come years later, he was going to tell me, you made Christianity attractive, and I'm going to church now.
Yeah. That's so good. That's exactly how it is too. You never know the good that you do.
You don't. And God just said, just love him. And that
Yep.
was like, this wasn't a boyfriend. This wasn't
Oh,
romantic. It was literally like, I see where you're at. I see
yep.
you and your devil sticker, like, and then, that's
See your
just,
beautiful sticker.
it's like, that's where you're at. But it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just you showing your light.
yeah.
God is love. The closer we get to God, the closer we get to love, that's going to overflow out of us.
Yep.
Naturally, who are you hanging out with? That's going to overflow.
And it's just like you said, so many times in my life, like especially on my mission, of course, I helped some people like come unto Christ, right? At the
Hmm.
time that I was there. But it wasn't until after my mission that a lot of people reached out to me and said, hey, you were the
Wow.
missionary that helped me. Hey, you were the missionary that just gave me this tidbit, or like you were the missionary that did this for me. And so and then after my mission, I'm always just who I am, right? I
Hmm.
can't really change that.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. It's normally the seeds that you plant, and then
Hmm.
years later you hear something. Or it could be the opposite. I just moved to Tokyo about a year ago. Within this past year, I've baptized three of my friends, right? So
Wow.
it's just been really humbling, I guess, like to know
Yeah.
that God has placed you places. We have this hymn in church. I don't know if you've heard it before. It's I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord, through mountain or plain or sea. I'll say what you want me to say, dear Lord. I'll be who you want me to be, right? And so I've just been feeling that a lot lately, kind
Wow.
of
Yeah.
you know who I am, Lord, you know who I am, and you know where to put me, where you want me to, because I'm always going to be that person that is, advocating for like I'm gonna, I just,
Yeah.
you helped me out so much in my life, God, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to show that to other people, and not in a weird, hey, do you know who God is kind of way,
Yeah.
It's just it's through your actions and who you are and who you present yourself as
Yeah.
people automatically, naturally kind of want to follow. I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain, you know?
Yeah, like you said, people are going to choose to follow on their own, not because you hold a gun to their head going, "Love Jesus." Like
Yeah.
that's
Do
it's
it
not it.
now.
That's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. It's just not it.
Yeah. And I know some I went back when I was in Bible school many years ago. We did an outreach of like, "Hey, just let's go to a college and let's just, love on people, see if anyone needs prayer or things like that." And we just had a girl that I could tell in the body language that I was partnered with somebody, and I could tell in the body language of the person being spoken to, they were uncomfortable, they were not in receive mode, and this person was kind of pushing it. And then when we left, she was just like, I just really want them to know God. I just really want to get somebody saved. And I'm like, that's beautiful to have the passion, but you need to have the emotional intelligence with it. And this, I wasn't at a place back then to even have this language to be able to walk somebody through that, right? But it was just like, that's lovely. I know you want people to experience the love of God the way you have, but it's like, you can't be like, love Jesus. And
You
like,
can't
that's,
force people to love Jesus. Like everyone has
yeah,
the agency, and it's like you said, a noble thing to like want to help people. But sometimes we got to put our own gas mask on first. And for those people, I've told a couple people, hey, look, that's great, but you got to put your own gas mask on first. And what I'm
yeah.
seeing right now is like you just want to. Are you doing this for yourself or for them?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing this to make yourself seem like you in your own head, I'm doing this because I want to help people and make myself feel like a good person? Or
Mm-hmm.
do you really just want to go out and help, right? So
Mm-hmm.
think about that question and, go to God with it. You don't have to come
Yeah.
to me, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, and this is practice discernment. Let's read the room, read the
Yeah,
body language, and there might be some times where you feel led to go up to somebody that has cold body language,
yeah.
that isn't in receive mode. But
100%. Everybody in Russia.
yeah, yeah,
The
right?
most of the people in Japan,
Yeah, right?
honestly.
And it's so interesting to me that you have such a warm personality, but you are in cold cultures.
Cold cultures. And I kind of like talked
Yeah,
to you about that the other day because it was just this thing that I've been recently thinking about because I've just had this kind of Mexican influence all of a sudden in my life and I never had it in America, right?
yeah,
Because it's kind of like whatever, I like
yeah,
Mexicans. Yeah, that's it.
yeah,
But like what I've seen is from Latino cultures, it's just so warm and so open and I kind of like what we ran into this Mexican family the other day and they just came up to us and like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, right? But they gave me a hug. They like you could just see that they cared about you and
yeah.
it was just so warm. I kind of teared up and I cried a little and I was like,
Wow.
wait a second. And I was just like, what is going on? What is this feeling? And I realized that I have kind of surrounded myself in colder cultures. And I don't want to like come across as rude or anything,
No,
right? Saying like America's the best or this culture's better. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying
it is
just
different.
it's just different. You
Yeah.
go to Russia and people because of their history, it's just colder and same in Japan, it's not so much of communism, but before the war began, right? Before Japan came together and became Japan back in like the 1800s, I forget, maybe even 1600s, it was just all a bunch of mafia states that killed each other. There was
Yeah.
no real morals, there was no real truth. It was all like code,
Hmm.
all mafia code. And I think I might get in trouble by Japanese people by saying that, but it's kind of true. It was all kind of yakuza, kind of mafia like groups that all killed each other and warred with each other for centuries. And
Hmm.
so they really never there was no religion either, right?
Hmm.
Anytime religion tried to get into the country, they were just killed. The missionaries were killed, the Buddhist missionaries were killed, Christian missionaries were killed. Everyone was killed because
Wow.
like
Yeah.
they wanted to control their people, right?
Hmm.
So finally, after the war, or a little bit before the war, that's kind of when religions were let in, but then they were stopped, and then World War II happened, and then the West came in, and now Japan is more open to things, and they think a little bit more, but it's very homogenistic. It's very collectivistic. People aren't allowed to think for themselves. You need
Mm.
their religion in Japan is being Japanese. And if you
Mm.
think outside, if you're a Japanese person and you think outside of the box and you do not think like a Japanese person should, you're ostracized from society, you know?
Wow.
That's go over there. So any sort of Christian that follows their religion in Japan, anybody that actually follows their religion, I won't even say Christian, they really have it hard here because it's just they sacrifice a lot in their work life, in their daily life, in their personal social lives to even be a believing person in anything because
Wow.
in Japan that is just not a Japanese thing to do. And so,
Yeah.
because of that, this society doesn't really praise you for speaking about how you feel, about how your emotions are. You're supposed to be uniform in everything that you think up to what you wear. You know, people
Wow.
wear white and black and everyone shops at Uniqlo, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so if you have such a uniform society and that's what you've been taught in elementary onward, like I worked in an elementary school for a year and a half and there are good things and bad things. And that was one of the bad things that I saw is that people aren't taught to have an opinion. They're just taught
Mm.
believe what your teacher says about everything, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a different mentality. And so I feel like it raises a colder people if they never are able to show love or
Mm.
learn about like kind of Christ-like love, whether
Yeah.
the West likes it or not, whether the West, meaning Europe and South America and North America, whether the West likes it or not, we are a community of countries that are based on Christian values.
Hmm.
Whether you are atheist, whether you are Muslim, whether whatever it is, the secret truth about all of the West is that we are founded upon Christian morals.
Our forefathers, they wrote it
Our
down in the
forefathers, all
stats. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you go to a country that isn't raised in that, it is a little bit colder, I think, than what you are used to.
Yeah.
Be
And
honest. Yeah.
yeah, and I just honestly think it's really intentional, just that you were put in Russia and then now you're in Japan. It's like you are naturally very seen because of your warmth. You know, like
Mm.
how people say, just your light, it's different. It's like, I think it's interesting how God has just like placed you there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But,
yeah. Now
and
I'm at
then,
this point though that I'm like, okay, is it time to go back to America? Should I go to Mexico? What should I do with my life, you know?
yeah, hey, I lived in Mexico for a year and yeah, I love it though, because if we're my experience there, they can be strict mamas, but
Mm.
also they're loving mamas.
Yeah, they
Like,
love.
yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously there was papas there too, but you know,
Yeah,
I was mama over there, right? But it was just, yeah, I liked it. But I also liked how they weren't super in your face. For in me in Mexico and stuff, if you go out, it was just like, hola. Like, and then, but, and in the States, I just feel like it's, hi, what
Hi,
color
how
underwear are
are
you
you?
wearing? Yeah.
Do you like that cereal? And I really like small talk and I'm good at it,
Yeah,
right?
you are.
But people in colder countries don't understand it. They're just like, what is going on? Why is he talking? Is he flirting with me? What does he want from me? Does he want to steal my money? Like, like they just automatically go to negative things when people are
Mhm.
talking to them. And they don't know them. But in America, we're so used to small talk.
Yeah.
But the negative side of small talk in America is that people feel that they have to do it. And like if they
And surface
feel
level.
it's just surface level, it's not deep at all. Americans are
Mm-hmm.
fake.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not everybody, of course. And I
Yeah.
can turn it on if I want to, right? But I
Yeah.
don't like fake, you know?
Yeah.
So
We're performers.
I say we're
We know
all
how to do it.
performers.
Yeah.
That was the biggest complaint of Russians in Russia. Why do you guys say, how are you? You don't know me. You don't care. I don't like you. You don't like me. We don't know. We're not family. You know, it's just like they just don't get why we would say, how are you if we really don't care about them, right?
Yeah.
But I would always say back, well, I'm not an average American. If I'm asking you how you're doing, I really want to know.
I love that. Yeah. What'd they say? How did they experience you
They
after
would
that
just be
typically?
like, typically they wouldn't, they're distrustful, of course. So they're just like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Or they'll answer back, okay, then, everything sucks in my life. My cousin's in jail, my husband beats me, and they'll just go through the list of
Wow.
all these things, and you're just like, oh, all right, well, you're okay. Well, God loves you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine it can be hard to shine in those moments, but like obviously like you said, you found sometimes the moments come later. They find you
Mm.
on Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Like
My
I
mission was
love
hard.
it.
I would never do it again. I would never go on a mission for 2 years again. If I was if you have if somebody said to me, you have to go to Russia again for 2 years and be a missionary, I'd be like, you know what? No, it was
Yeah.
very hard. It was 12 hours a
Yeah.
day of work every day of your
Whoa.
life for 2 years. It's like when people that aren't religious want to know about it and like, why would I do it? I'm like, well, it kind of makes a boy a man. Well, let's put it that way,
I
you
could see
know?
that. Even me, like I was 24 when I moved to
Mm,
Mexico, and I worked at an orphanage. I was a teacher and I became a house parent,
mm,
and it made me grow up.
yeah.
Like just differences of you can drink tap water in the States if you want to. You
Mm-mm.
can't do that in Mexico. We would just go out in town, and it's interesting how you can almost become desensitized by the end of your experience. Like you said, apocalyptic, right? Mine wasn't that dramatic, but there's homemade sheds people are living in. And
Mm.
it's just like
Yeah,
that I was in Tijuana, right? And it was just like that's normal.
crazy.
But
It totally, yeah.
in the States, I didn't get that. In my little cliquey town, like I'm
Yeah.
like, we didn't see that,
Mm.
and you were made fun of if you didn't have name brand like shoes and like
Aeropostale,
like
Hollister.
are they
Oh,
real Uggs or not? Like just
yeah.
yeah.
Are
And
they
so
real?
it's
Yeah.
yeah. But honestly, yeah, just I totally understand just different cultures and stuff, and that's learned behavior
Yeah.
again, you know?
100%.
And, just kind of going back to the thing of like boys are just dumb and stuff. And my hot take on that is I think there's a lot of men out there that were not raised with the standard because, oh, boys are just dumb. They just don't have it. So we don't have to teach it nor hold them accountable. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, that doesn't fly on my team. Like,
I
you are a smart, intelligent person. You will rise to do what I call bare minimum.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting because you meet those kind of people and then they feel they're doing a whole bunch of hard work and it's like I want you to know that's baseline.
Mm.
I've worked with some people that they're like, well, I don't have a lot of friends and I get to work with that and I'm like, what are you doing? And it's like,
What are
you
you doing to
think
make friends? What you have to go out of your way a little bit,
yeah. And then their work they were doing in this scenario, it was, oh, you're doing baseline work. That's baseline. That's not getting people's attention. I need you to know I do that. Like, that's nothing in a
Yeah,
sense. I see
yeah,
your effort, but that's not enough,
yeah.
And all that to say, it's just like a lot of people I've just seen just put men down and like they're just dumb. That's just the way they are. They're just dumb. And it's like,
Especially in our culture today, that's the popular narrative. Like
yeah. And
men aren't as good as women, to be honest. That's the
and
way we kind of were raised, I feel like sometimes.
yeah. And I've had someone before tell me, they're like, well, I just know I can't go to my husband on that, so I just go to you. And I'm like, okay, like that's totally fine if like that's okay if you're marrying into that and you're okay. I can't do that. I
Yeah.
know too many emotionally intelligent men that I would rather be single for the rest of my life and have emotionally intelligent dude friends than be
Mhm.
with somebody that, oh, they're just dumb. Oh,
Yeah.
that's just the way they are. No, no. We have to rise the standard up on that.
Mhm.
But yeah, there are a lot of women that like to push back on me on that and just, no, that's just the way they is. Okay, where you live, they're different, I guess. Like, but they are. They were clearly held accountable.
Exactly. And I think it comes from it's the same sort of vein of remember like the Baptist lady coming up to me like
Hmm.
she doesn't know anything else and wants to know anything else because
Mm,
she's comfortable where she's at and she just wants to be right, right?
hmm.
When I it kind of same thing when with these people in your life that say like men can't be like this. Well, that's what they've married into. Like that's
Yeah.
what they've chosen for themselves. That's probably what they were raised with, right?
Hmm.
I don't really know if there could be any difference. Like I remember one time just this random it's kind of the same vein, right? This girl just comes up to me and says like, oh yeah, like guys just look at like all the girls body parts all the times and that's the only thing they're like attracted to and that's the only thing that they're looking at kind of thing. And it's very odd because a lot of people are in their own little bubbles in their head, right?
Hmm.
They don't really know anything else, which I feel bad for them for because not every man is like that. But
Yeah.
I almost think that you kind of accept what you know.
Hmm.
And if you don't want to know anymore, or if you've already made a decision and you feel like, oh shoot, like I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to like deal with this emotion I have on the inside of, oh no, I made a bad choice,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I'm not even talking about marriage, right?
Yeah.
But like people don't really want to, they'd rather be right in their lie that they're telling themselves
Mm-hmm.
than deal with the emotion of, oh shoot, I might be wrong. Or maybe
Yeah.
not every man is like this, but I don't
Yeah.
want to find out. I don't want to put that effort out there. I just want somebody to magically just show up for me, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not the way that God works, even. God wants us to
Mm-hmm.
put effort. God is a God of effort, right? And
Mm-hmm.
for me in my life, like I really wanted friends, but I was so shy until I was 16, until I moved to Oregon. And Oregon was my chance to, I'm going to talk. I don't want to be bullied anymore. I want to just like talk and be able to communicate. I was so shy and awkward. And then
Mm-hmm.
I made a pact with God. I said, hey, God, I have been waiting so long for friends to show up in my life. I've been waiting for so long for things to happen to me. I will put forth that first foot, that first effort. Please help me to just like stumble, but stumble somewhere. Help me to make
Yeah.
friends, help me to find those and that I can help and that can help me back. I want that symbiotic friendship with people that people have in the movies.
Yeah.
It took a lot of effort in my life to
Mm-hmm.
become the person I am today. But I slowly raised my hand in every class period during that, what, 10th grade year I was in Seaside. And I was like, hey, like, just raise your hand, Connor. You don't know what you're gonna say, but you've already said, hey, Heavenly Father, please help me out. Just like what
Yeah.
it is some sort of like joke or if it pertains to the lesson or something, just say it. And I found out,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm funny. People
Yeah.
like what I have to say.
Yeah.
I'm actually better than what I think, right?
Yeah.
But if we don't practice those things, if we don't like so many people want something to happen to them that forces them to practice, but forcing
Mm-hmm.
never helps somebody grow, you know. God's a God of effort and he wants us to put in a little bit of work as much as you can, right? And
Yeah.
everybody they can is a little bit different, but God
Yeah.
knows and he's gonna fill in the rest. Like that's the whole point of the atonement of Jesus Christ is to help
Yeah.
fill the blanks, help fill if you can only do 40%, great. That's the best you can do. The 60% is already filled for you.
Yes. God fills
Blessings
the
are coming,
gaps.
you know?
Yeah. And just on that too, I've had moments where it's like I feel like it just got handed to me, but I'm
Mm.
like, in reality, I think I put in the work backstage and
Yeah,
now I'm
yeah,
receiving it. But a lot of time I can even speak for myself. So, God, I want to change. God, I want to change. What was I doing to actually change? I
exactly.
was waiting for the change to just, there's some miraculous things. If I just had a change of heart and it's been different ever since. I've
Mm.
had moments like that, right?
Yeah,
But God is a God of effort. Like, okay,
yeah.
you want more friends? What are you doing to work on that? You
Yep.
and I love that too, because I've only ever known you as outgoing,
Oh, thank
and so
thank you.
you put the effort in to be like,
I
this
really
is
did.
me.
Like that was me, but it wasn't me before I moved to Oregon. Like Oregon was my new chance at like, becoming me, right?
Yeah, I love that. Oh,
So
that's so
but I
good.
wouldn't have done it if I didn't have God and if I didn't have that base
Yeah,
of like I believe that he's there. I don't really know for like certain, but like I'm gonna put this science experiment to the test. And that's really what it is. It's
yeah,
a scientific method of, you know, hey, God, are you there? Can you help me out? I'm making a plan. I'm coming to you with it, right?
yeah. And
Then
it's
if it's a
that,
righteous plan, it'll work out.
yeah, and it's really that simple. Like you said, if it's a righteous plan, it'll work out. Or I believe he's a good God that if it's not righteous, but you're trying, he'll be like, nah, this way. Like you're close.
You're
Yeah,
close.
right? But
Going back though, sorry, go ahead for
no, you go.
I was gonna go back to emotional intelligence, right, real
Yes,
fast.
yes.
That's that like we were talking about before we got into this topic about how like guys just like, everyone's like, oh, guys are dumb, guys are this, guys just all are kind of I
Written
was
off as just dumb, but
yeah,
they
just
can
written off
sure
as
build
dumb,
a
right?
house.
But like, there's stereotypes for men and women, right?
Yeah.
You can say the same thing about
Girls
women.
lack emotional intelligence too
Yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes I know a few, quite a few. But what I was saying about that is what I have learned from living in many different places of the world is that um, femininity and masculinity are very kind of socially constructed concepts that do sometimes, depending on the culture, hold men and women down for different reasons, right?
I can
And
see
so
that.
what I have learned is that, you know, I will try not to be too crude, right? But I really do think God looks at masculinity and femininity as, okay, are you born as a man? Great. Then anything that you choose to do with your manhood in this life is you using your masculinity. And vice versa for femininity. If you're born a woman in this life
Hmm.
and you are growing, as a woman, everything they do in this life is you using your femininity.
Hmm.
But I really do think that that's how God sees it. And I just think that it, culture, depending where you're at, and then there's the overarching culture of the world that we live in right now. I think a lot of problems stem from people not knowing who they are, first
Yeah.
off, right? But also
Hmm.
not understanding that they are, how do I say? How do I put this into words? Um,
Um, do you almost, I don't know if this is exactly where you're
go
going in
ahead,
on
go
it.
ahead.
It's not knowing who they are and then also not being empowered in who
Well,
they
not
are.
being that, but going back to like the man thing, right? Because it's a part of cultural masculinity to not talk about things, to keep your emotions
True.
in, be the strong person. And that version of strong is to hold it all in. I think it is a little bit stronger to let it out and talk about things, and not just talk about things, but kind of, be realistic and try to
Yeah.
overcome those things, right?
Hmm.
Because we live in a world where, okay, let's talk about our emotions. Let's hear about our emotions. Let's go to
Hmm.
a counselor. Let's go to a therapist, which is all great.
Hmm.
But are you putting in the work to overcome, you know?
Yes.
And so I just think that
It's one thing
because
to be aware, and it's another thing to put in the work to
yeah,
change.
100%, 100%, whether you're a man or a woman, right? But I
Hmm.
just think that a lot of these problems that stem from men not having emotional intelligence, I do think, like you said, is a biological difference between men and women. And I
Hmm.
think just like there are piano prodigies, right, that come from heaven and they are 2 years old and can play Mozart, right? I
Hmm.
do think there are spiritual gifts that people are born with, and there are
Hmm.
spiritual gifts that you have to work for,
Yes, I agree.
It's even in the Bible, Um, it's written down, I
Yeah.
just think that there are people that are born with emotional intelligence, and I think the majority of them are women because I do think it's more of a motherly thing to have
The
emotional
nurturer.
than to
Hmm.
nurture, to care for. Um, but there are men, I think, too, that are just kind of born with it. I do think that I kind of have always been innately discerning, innately more emotionally, and I can read people well. I don't know how to
Hmm.
explain it, but people get
Hmm.
annoyed at me sometimes because I can read things too well, and I've had to learn how to shut my mouth sometimes because like they're like, "How do you know that about me?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
I see it
That's
on you, your
what I see
shoulders.
it on you. It's just right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just think that it isn't a cultural thing, of masculinity to
Hmm.
how do I say, to support that emotion. And going kind
Yeah.
of like more into like the gospel, we live in a world of contention and opposites, and the devil's at play. And I
Hmm.
really think the devil does not want good men in this world.
Yeah.
And I really think he can skews a lot of things when it comes to masculinity and femininity
Hmm.
because he wants to keep men emotionally unintelligent. He doesn't
Hmm.
want them to emulate Christ in any of their doings. So he is going to skew that in every culture. And, even when you go to church as a kid, in any
Hmm.
religion, I think that is the predominant culture of like, you need to be a man. Yeah, man, football, power. And
Hmm.
that's, you know, but then they say at church, oh, we love Jesus. Like, Jesus is awesome. He's my best friend. Like, he is just like my one advocate. He is our savior, all these things. But all of these attributes that Jesus has, if you put them into just a normal dude, not saying that they are perfect like Jesus, right?
Oh,
But they,
yeah.
they,
We
they
could
just try to
never.
have Christ-like attributes. they are mercilessly, whether it's in a church setting growing up or whether it's in a school setting growing up, you are just mercilessly bullied
Mm.
to no end. It's just people are bullied. You get all of the slurs thrown at you. You get all of everything. You're beat up at school, like all of these things, and it's just kind of across the board. I feel like more emotionally intelligent men kind of seem to have statistically kind of a tumultuous childhood when it comes to
Mm.
whether it's in the home or outside of the home. And for me, it was outside of the home, right?
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people would go, all the things that you've been through, Connor, how are you even believing in a God anymore? You know? And I'm like, because God was the only one that I could turn to rely on. The only
Yeah.
person that gave me comfort outside of my immediate family.
Yeah.
So, I just think that going back to emotional intelligence in men, it is not something that is um, produced so much in men because not produced. What word am I looking for? Sorry. It's hard when you have these other languages in your head and
Oh, I
you
get it. They're
but
fighting on which one to come out your mouth.
yeah.
Like, I get it.
Which one do I
I'm there
say to
too.
convey my message? Um, like I just think, yeah, produced, I don't know. It's just not cultivated. We'll put it that way. It's just
Yeah.
not cultivated so much in men because men are supposed to be these like, oh, ah, yeah.
The
And
provider. Yeah.
and which they are, they should provide, and I think that's right, but they should also provide emotional security as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
The devil doesn't want that. The devil doesn't want good families. The devil doesn't want good men or good women. Women are targeted in different ways than men are.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, even me, I grew up in a German household and Germans don't cry. Toughen up. Like
No, yeah, that's
I
true.
was allowed to, like, my mom wouldn't shame me if I cried, but like it was just I wasn't, if she cried, it was a breakdown. Like, and I didn't see that all the time. So it was a big buildup, right? It wasn't taught that, like, hey, I'm having a rough day. I can talk, but I just have tears coming down my face right now. You're not weak, you're healing. You're processing what just happened. Your body's trying to get it out. And I was discussing with the client, it's a male, and
Mm,
we're going over the science behind tears. And
mm,
he's just like, I feel unstable when I'm
mm,
crying. And it's like, well, that's your body saying you need to stabilize. It's trying to regulate you back to stable. And it's not against you, it's for you. And we got into, and they're like, oh, but this person obviously was not taught that
yeah.
or they didn't at least retain it in this moment. And so it's just things like that. Like I had men in California teaching me to have more feelings,
Mm,
like process it out. You're allowed to have feelings. And I'm just like, I'll be happy or angry. Those are really comfortable. I feel
yeah.
like I excelled
I
in that in
remember
high
that. I
school.
remember that, Kayla.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
now, and now it's just like, oh, okay, well, a lot of my anger actually was sadness, but I'm more powerful being angry because I was taught by my father, anger is power, right? Toxic, toxic. So I lacked emotional intelligence too. And now getting to this place, it's like, okay, there's masculine, there's feminine, but it's like there's so much you can do in masculinity. It's not just that, like you said, that I'm a man. It's like,
Oh, yeah,
y-
listen to me. I have the power, you know?
yeah, you're a man. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to do theater if you want. You know, you're allowed
Exactly.
to play football if you want. You're still a man.
Emotion, all those things. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you're gay. It doesn't mean that you're
No.
less than like other men. It doesn't mean that you are more womanly. Like all of those things. I think a lot of men are a lot they're scared to hear those things and they're
Yeah.
bullied, both men and women, with in their families, outside the families. It's just the culture is to bully men, to be honest.
Yeah.
Are expected to put up with a lot as a man.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, like there is that client, that man that you're talking to and helping him learn how to cry. I've had so many instances in my life where I'm teaching my good guy friends, like, okay, like let's open up, let's talk about this, let's like,
Mm-hmm.
not in the words like be more emotionally intelligent. Let's be more emotionally intelligent. But in other words,
Yeah.
um, I teach them those things and I help them out, and I don't know sometimes that I am teaching them, but then later they come back and they're like, I learned that from you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what I've learned is that because men are not used to doing that, right? Um, they'll forget really easily. And they
Mm-hmm.
have to almost, it takes multiple times for them to um become a little bit more emotionally intelligent when it comes to crying or showing their emotion,
Yeah. They need to
listening
be held
deeply,
accountable.
and they have
Yeah.
to, yeah, but
Yeah.
they just don't get it a lot of the times the first time if they've never been taught how to do that before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's things I walk my clients through too, because it's just like, okay, we're learning that. Okay,
Yeah,
like you have to remember now you have this tool moving
yeah,
forward. And we have moments of, I forgot about that. And it's like, yeah, I'm here to remind you. And then,
yeah,
weeks later, I did that thing. I remembered. It's like you have to work at it. And just like you were saying too, and it's like just honing in on a man can be manly. And I think we need to just stop generalizing things. There are certain things that I think are very obvious feminine and very
yes,
obvious masculine. I want to
yes.
make that clear. We don't need to
Right.
hone in on that.
Yeah.
But like, I think a lot of things like, oh, like theater, like, oh, that's girly. It's like, is it?
Mhm.
Like, I don't think so. Just because a man does that doesn't mean he is either or, you know?
Mhm.
And let's be clear, what is gay? A man is sexually attracted to another man. A woman is
Exactly.
sexually attracted to another woman. It's
Definitely.
okay if a woman wants to have a short haircut. She can still
Yeah.
be attracted to men. It's okay
Yeah.
if this guy wants
Yeah.
to do like whatever that's known to be feminine, but it's
Mhm.
just, I feel there's a lot of pressure on, well, you do this, now you're this. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, I do
It's
this.
black and white. There's no gray. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
not, God is gray and he's like black and white in some things, right? But like I feel like,
Yeah.
life is gray when it comes to a lot of those things, and people want to
Yeah.
box things into boxes, and like even
Mm-hmm.
inside that box box it even more because it feels
Yeah.
to them safe. It feels to them like, oh, I understand myself. But what you're really doing is you're boxing yourself in so much with labels and things that you forget who you really are. And like
Yeah.
when people ask me like, I don't know. And I don't get it so much in Japan, right? But if I'm around kind of a more openly liberal crowd, not saying that all liberals are bad, right?
Yeah,
Or anything
no.
like that, they'll like ask me like for labels or things like that, and they'll just kind of automatically put their labels out there. And when people talk to me, I'm like, well, my name's Connor, and that's all you need to know, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's really like I don't have it like and in my brain, I'm a child of God, right? Those are
Yeah.
the only two that matter. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just feel like a lot of the time people like to, because they get bullied or they feel kind of awkward or they feel, oh no, I've never done like this kind of emotion thing before. Or opposite, I am so good at emotions. I just am too emotional. Like, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
They don't, I feel like God helps us understand who we are, and kind of if we're patient with ourselves, he shows us ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
um, but people that don't really have that kind of guidance in their lives, rely on what the popular thing is to believe in,
Yeah.
and really does come to choosing labels and do really just kind of
Yeah.
isolating yourself within a label. And I think that stunts growth, to be honest.
Yeah, I get that. You can't super label me. Now I have some things like I am a woman, I am a child of God, right? Like
Yeah.
there's
Obvious
absolutes.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, it's like I'm so many things. Depending
I'm
on who
so
I
good.
hang out
Yeah.
with is
Yeah.
what character comes out. Not that I have
Exactly.
multiple personalities. I'm naturally more lively because you get me.
Yeah.
You understand me, I'm going to be a little more loud about it, you know?
Yeah.
Other people, if I'm with my quiet people, I'm going to be
Mm,
more gentle with them. They're not loud. It's just, who am I? I'm like, I am who I choose to be on the daily.
yeah.
Where am I? Who am I with?
Mm,
Like, you don't have to put yourself in a box.
yeah.
Like, it's like you said, it's like some people, well, there's this. And I'm working with somebody that comes from a small town as well. And
Mm,
they were just kind of honing in on just like, well, they're really judgy around here. And I was like, are they? Are they saying that they might be? But then we really got to, they said it. I think I'm just really judgy because I come from a judgy family. So I think everyone else is judging the way I was taught. And
mm,
it's like, oh, that's
yeah.
real. But there's also me, a lot of things you say, I'm not thinking twice about when I see other people down the street. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it's just, it's wild out there. But there's a lot of learned behavior that we have to unlearn. And like, you're allowed to have your labels. If you need labels to help you move forward, that's great. I think they should be positive, like positive
Learn something
affirmations.
higher, right? If you learn it,
Yes.
like take that. Like always be open to something higher.
Yes. Yes.
So
What
I
I
think.
No,
true.
you go.
What you said. No, what you said, right? If that label helps you for the moment, like,
Yes.
if it helps you cope, maybe,
Yeah.
like, or if you feel like it is you, great.
Yeah.
But like, be open and humble to what if there's something I'm not, or what if there's something I
Yeah.
am, or, I don't know. Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I look at it and I guess describe it is some people are in their boxes because they choose to be.
Mm,
There's some people that behave certain ways, right?
yeah,
And to me, I will put them in a box with an open lid.
yeah.
It's like you're there, but the lid is open. You are more than welcome to not be in that box.
I'm
And
not
I
making a
like,
final judgment on you. You can get out of that at any time.
yes,
Yeah,
right? With certain behaviors. I'm like, not a fan. You're in that box with the lid open. Feel free to
yeah,
change when you want to? And just with me too, it's like, there's certain boxes that I feel I can fit in, but it's like, I want the lid open
yeah.
because I don't want to stay stuck. I want to constantly be getting higher. That's why I love what these podcasts are really about too for me is like I want other people to see different perspectives. I grow when I talk with you. Hopefully other
Same,
people can see
likewise.
this. And yeah, like and iron sharpens iron. Like let's get different perspectives. And
Exactly.
I just think it's differences are beautiful
Yeah.
because there's just so many things out there that like because of the differences we were lured in,
Yeah.
like there might be somebody in a category that you're like, ew, I don't want that, whatever that is. Somebody else in that category, it's like, oh, you carried that really well. You had emotional intelligence and I actually want to join you. Like, yeah,
Good job.
yeah, I think it's beautiful. Difference is beautiful and just honing in, you can have deep emotional connections with people and have them be the complete opposite of you.
Yep, 100%. I
Yeah.
have so many friends that don't believe in anything, atheist friends, like you said, it's across the board for me too. I
Hmm.
have so many different people that I know in my life, and I love them all. There's no
Yeah.
hate toward any of them. They
Yeah.
think differently than me. How can I? I just really do feel, especially in America, we have this culture of, oh my gosh, they think the same as me, except for this one little thing. Therefore, they hate me. They're against me. They're not my
Yeah.
people. But the thing is like, even in our own families, we don't agree with each other 100%.
No. Yeah.
You know, we fight sometimes, but we still love each other, you know?
Hmm.
And I just feel like a lot of people in this world today, especially the political world today, even outside of the political world, everyone's just so much more black and white than I feel like it used to be. And
Mm.
I just think, yeah, we all gotta love each other. And I think people are forgetting how to love each other and to meet in the
Yeah.
middle and to do those things because those are all Christ-like attributes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't want to hear that nowadays. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to be Christian to follow Christ-like attributes if you want to. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't want to label them Christ-like attributes. But the truth of the matter is it comes straight from him.
Yeah. Thou
You know?
shalt not be a jerk should be in every religion.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
it's matter of fact, right?
Or it comes from God. That's just how it is. And I just, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like a huge reason why me and you have a lot of friends because we have that openness. Be like, oh,
yeah,
cool. We have two things we can connect on. We can
yeah,
build a whole relationship off of that.
exactly.
Literally.
And a lot of
Yeah.
people want to like kind of go off those differences. Like I even have friends that want to argue religion or do those things,
Hmm.
but it's tiring. Like it's just it
Yeah.
doesn't get them anywhere. And I just kind of get bored of it because a lot of people, that's where you're at. If you don't want to believe in God, then you don't have to ask me like a million times, like, don't you think this is stupid? Don't you think that's stupid? Because I'm gonna answer you back the same answer every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like
Yeah.
I have friends like that, but we still love each other and we respect each other. We're friends, and
Yeah.
it's possible to be good friends with people that are completely different in
Yeah.
like how do you say in religion, but not just religion, just in
Personalities.
personality,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I'm not saying be friends with a murderer, but like,
Yeah. Yeah. And that still have boundaries,
yeah,
if
still
it's
have boundaries. Still put your gas mask on first, the oxygen mask on first before
yeah.
you help somebody else on the plane. That's what
Yeah,
they say. Same
absolutely.
spiritually.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. If they're gonna make you stumble or it's
yeah,
easier for you to stumble with certain people, they're probably not your crowd that you should be hanging
exactly.
around. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, I like that. Put your mask on first and then help other people. Like, perfect
Exactly.
boundary example. Well, yeah, I guess as we're ending, is there anything else that you just need to get out around emotional intelligence?
Gosh, I think I got a lot of it out. I don't know. Um, you're really good at asking questions and keeping the like conversation going, right? So
Oh,
I
thank you.
appreciate that. That you're good at that. Um, is there anything else that I'd like to say? Well, I guess if you're a man and you are with a woman that is like trying to make you more emotionally intelligent, and you yourself are trying to become more emotionally intelligent, or you're not with a woman and you just are a man and you want to be more emotionally intelligent, it's so possible, right? And you just got to keep working at it. Some people are lucky and they get born with certain things, certain talents, right? But it doesn't
Hmm.
mean that you can't work towards that as well and gain that. So, um,
Yes.
and you just have to practice it. It's like I like to say to my friends, we are the pianos that we practice, right? So
Hmm.
you practice Mozart every day, you're really bad at the beginning, right? But
Hmm.
by the end of 10 years, you're really good. And some of you are going, uh, I don't want to like wait 10 years to be emotionally intelligent. I'm not saying it's going to be 10 years, right? But it might be a couple. You got to be
Yeah.
patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of my good dude friends that I've been friends with for over a decade, right? They weren't always like that. I would say the majority of my dude friends weren't emotionally intelligent completely to
Wow.
begin
Yeah.
with. Um, as they've kind of gone through this past decade, they are a lot more. They listen a lot better than they ever used to. They care about people's opinions and their wives' opinions now, a lot of them. So and they listen to like what their wives had to say. And it's vice versa. I think,
Yeah.
there are girls that struggle with the same things,
For
right? But
sure.
I'm gonna be talking for the men here, right?
Yeah.
I just think that men want connection, and men, even between other men, they want that connection, that kind of
Hmm.
emotional connection, but they just don't know how to circumnavigate that
Yeah.
because it's not something that's manly in like the
Yeah.
culture nowadays with like Generation Z and Alpha. I feel like they don't care, right? It's a lot different from like our age and up.
Yeah.
But, it's totally possible to do those things. You just have to work at it. You have to play that piano. You have to practice that piano. And it's not fun
Hmm.
at first. It's not hard. Like I have my own things in my life that, I've had to work on and in
Hmm.
other categories. And everyone has their things and everyone has their things that kind of bring them to their knees. And if this emotional intelligence thing is something that like brings you to your knees, well, you're on your way there.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it be like, if it brings you to your knees and you really want it, well, you're already practicing your emotions, you're already practicing feeling those emotions, and God places those emotions in our life through like the Holy Ghost impresses you upon your soul. And if you're being impressed upon your soul right now to have this in your life, then you're on your way there. You're on the right path. And so I think that's where I would end that for today is it's totally possible to become who you want to become. It's not going to be easy sometimes, most of the time,
Hmm.
but you're on your way there and just striving, just trying, just that's what really matters. In the
Yeah.
eye everybody around you, right? We are our own worst critics and we beat ourselves up so much, right? But the other people around you are seeing you trying and are
Hmm.
striving to become better. And not only that, God sees you too. So
Yeah.
use him for strength and help when you need it. Because you can't get
Yeah.
all of your like help from other people. So
Yeah.
God answers our prayers through scriptures, through uh, praying, through lots of different things, but a lot of the time he answers it through other people. So
A
of course,
lot of times.
wait for other people, but don't just wait. Have faith. Faith is a verb. Like
Hmm.
act upon that faith. Put a step into the dark. Go and try to meet people. Go and try to talk to people. Go and try to be that person that you want other people to be for you first. And
Hmm.
then you will eventually get that 100%.
Yeah.
So that's just how it is. God loves you. The end.
Yeah. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. There's hope for everyone out there,
Yeah.
man and woman.
Yep.
You can be emotionally intelligent.
Yep.
This is something I specialize in, but there are many other trained professionals who want to help you in this area if
Yep.
you're looking for it. But Connor, that was good. You took me to church. I feel closer to God in this. And yeah, yeah,
Good.
thank you so much for just showing up and just sharing
Yeah.
your heart on the topic.
Yeah. Anything for you, Kayla.
Yeah,
You're one of the OGs.
I
So
love it. Well, thank you so much.